When I first started dating my now husband, a lot of the disappointment and pain that I had experienced in past relationships or witnessed in different marriages around me as a kid started to come up. I felt acutely anxious and fearful of repeating past mistakes. And in that headspace, I started hearing things differently when my friends and I would discuss our dating highs and lows. So much of what we were thinking about and so many of the choices we were making tracked back to the unions we had grown up around or those formative first loves. And I wanted this book to create community for readers who wanted to acknowledge the impact of foundational relationships on their present life and relationship choices. My parents' marriage is about Kokui. She is a young Ghanaian woman eager to forge a fresh path of freedom for herself. She's traumatized by her father's flagrant philandering and by her mother and stepmother's jockeying for his divided heart. Kokui is desperate to escape the shadow of her parents' marriage. She believes she has achieved this when she quickly falls for and marries one Boris Vanderpoy, a man headed to the States for university because he seems nothing like her wealthy, domineering dad. But not long after the couple moves to the US to start their supposed grand new life of university studies, Kokui realizes that she's pushing up against much more than her parents' turbulent union. She's battling a web of traditions, systems, and attitudes that conspire to empower the men in her life at the expense and dignity of the women. So let's start with traditions. Kokui has grown up in a society where a man having multiple women is the norm. Her father has women all over the place, and polygyny is all around her, enshrined in the law. Under Ghanaian law, there are three types of marriage. Customary marriage, which involves the man's presentation of a dowry to the woman's family and entitles him to take multiple wives. Then you have Mohammedan marriage, which, according to Islamic law, also permits the man to take multiple wives. And then you have ordinance marriage. And so ordinance was instituted in 1884 under colonial rule. It's nicknamed white wedding. And an ordinance marriage involves the filing and issuance of required paperwork to the satisfaction of a licensed marriage officer. And it is strictly monogamous. So a man is not legally allowed to marry another woman if he already has an ordinance marriage on the books. But in practice, many men, including Kokui's father, exploit the customary and ordinance marital traditions to maintain different women and families to the ultimate displeasure of the women. You might conclude that it was the colonialist imposition of monogamous marriage that created this angst or displeasure in women. But there are Akan proverbs like, if you have 1,000 wives, you have 1,000 troubles, or if you have 10 wives, you have 10 tongues. And those are just a few of the proverbs that acknowledge the upheaval and division in polygynous homes. Kokui's father, exploiting the customary and ordinance marital traditions, has cleaved Kokui's family in pieces and shaken her own feelings of worthiness as a woman. She believes if she can find a man who loves only her and will be faithful to her, she will find her worth in that fidelity. But of course, it's not that simple. Now let's talk systems. So my parents' marriage opens at the end of 1972, a year into the military-backed regime of Colonel Ignatius Achampong. His government was known for creating a culture of gross graft and corruption called kalibule, which, among other things, involved using the nation's purse to buy lavish presents for their wives and extramarital girlfriends. Being a woman at this time, the message was clear. Find a rich and powerful man and you're set. Setting up a system where wealthy, powerful, usually older married men took and paraded young women as girlfriends on the side as a symbol of their largesse and manliness. So Patriarchy is a global phenomenon, and additionally, the men in Kokui's life are domineering and authoritative because they grew up under the same traditions and systems as she did. Kokui's father controls and betrays women with his commanding personality and his money. So when Kokui connects with Boris, who doesn't have money or an authoritarian demeanor, she thinks, I found my unicorn. But once she and Boris are in the States, Kokui finds that he and his cousin Semi, who they go to live with, are also trying to dominate the women in their lives. Boris wants to commandeer Kokui's life choices, from the type of employment she should seek to the course of study she should pursue, while Boris's cousin Semi takes a more brazen and violent approach on his wife Frima. I read a lot of Ghanaian proverbs about marriage and love. I read Ghanaian marriage law cases. I read old papers from foreign advocacy groups trying to determine whether they had a right to advocate for Ghanaian women caught up in lawsuits because their husbands had died with both ordinance and customary wives, leaving a whole host of inheritance issues. And a lot of these advocacy groups understood the tension and the optics of sort of coming in with a sort of Eurocentric idea and perpetrating that on Africans. Colonialism. Colonialism caused a lot of angst. Not only with respect to marriages, but just at all levels of society. The British came in to exploit for their own benefit, and in some cases they propped up traditional systems, and in others they imposed change. And so it's incredibly messy. You have a society and a people trying to reconcile traditional indigenous customs and beliefs alongside European influence and British colonial rule. In a way, it's its own kind of marriage, one that wasn't entered into on equal or willing footing, and one that required a violent separation, but that ultimately created a union and left a complex legacy, to say the least. That said, I don't think we can take away the agency from the particular actors in particular situations. The men in this book choose patriarchy. They pick and choose the traditions they want to adhere to and the European ideas they want to adopt. And that's not only linked to customs or marriage, but it's in every area of life. Again, patriarchy is not unique to Ghanaian traditions or Ghanaian society. It is, a global phenomenon. The hardest thing about writing my parents' marriage for me was finding the line where the personal becomes universal. This book is not about me or my parents, but it is very personal to me. It was also hard to wrestle with these ideas of colonial impact on Ghanaian, and for the purposes of this book, Togolese society. Kokui comes from the Ewe people who straddle Ghana and Togo and Benin. And while in Ghana, at least 70% of the citizens are Christian, in Togo, where Kokui's mother is from, traditional African religions thrive. So that is also a tension in Kokui's parents' marriage. Her father is a Christian and has raised the kids in the church, but her mother goes to the marché to see the fetish priest when she needs answers. Her father does not want his kids going to the fetish priest. But there's a scene in the book when Kokui goes to look for a priest at the marché to give her something that she can take to guarantee her marriage will be successful. What she encounters is the priest's sister, who has taken over from him in the wake of his death. And when Kokui explains what she has come to the priestess for, she expects the woman to, prescribe a sacrifice of some sort, maybe bring a chicken, and, maybe they'll read entrails of some sort. Instead, the woman speaks to her of Christ's blood, and it leaves Kokui bewildered and disappointed. She laments that things have changed, but so much is changing around her, and what Kokui has to decide is which changes she wants to adopt for herself. What I most want readers to take away from My Parents' Marriage is that we can have what we don't see. We all, confront a legacy of baggage that we didn't pack. We are born into this world. We are born into our families, and we sort of enter in the middle of the story. But we don't have to continue a cycle that is harmful to us just because that's all we've seen around us. We have the right to make a change, to choose change, and we have the right to advocate for ourselves to get it.